từng chuyện buồn vui ta có. Anh biết quê là điều rất khó. Anh biết xa em lại càng khó hơn. Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung, hay tiếng trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng, hay tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Every living system on our beloved planet is an eloquent expression of the universe's astonishing ability to come into perfect balance, and then to do what life is meant to do, to thrive. Thriving is the natural thing of life.
Anh cố tìm kiếm về nỗi đau, nếu lúc đầu mình vội vàng vượt qua nhau để làm tình mình chẳng còn thêm sâu. Còn anh với nỗi nhớ đông đầy, anh ước chi em biết anh buồn, để em hiểu cho nỗi đau khi phải làm xa. Quê là điều rất khó. Anh biết xa em lại càng
Consider
khó
what is surely one
hơn.
of the
Mọi
greatest
thứ trước mắt
wonders of
cứ
all.
rối
How a
tung,
tiny egg
hay
and a
tiếng
single irrepressibly
trôi
plucky
chỉ
sperm
một trong
can
muôn
unleash a
lý
process
do
that
để
brings forth
ngừng
in the
yêu
end
em.
another one of
Như
us.
cái cách em đã xem
A being
chuyện
of
mình
vast
kết thúc
ability and
mà anh vẫn
unlimited
cố
potential,
chấp đến
with a
cùng,
brain
hay
capable of
tiếng
complex and
trôi
soaring
chỉ
self-reflection,
một trong muôn lý
legs
do
made to
để
dance,
rời xa em.
fingers
Dẫu quá
nimble
khứ
enough to
đuổi kịp
weave a
anh
basket,
khi chạy trốn thế
play a
giới
violin,
này, cũng chẳng
caress a
thể làm
face.
em tan biến.
If nature teaches us anything, it is that life is meant to work, and that like every living thing, our purpose is to thrive.
Khi những ánh đèn đường soi sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời anh hay được không?
And yet, for the
Hãy
majority
tìm
of people on the planet, life
chỉ
is not
một
about
trong
thriving.
muôn lý do
It's about
để
surviving.
ngừng yêu
Just
em. Như cái cách em đã xem
Is
chuyện
this
mình
really
kết
the
thúc
best we can do?
mà anh vẫn cố chấp
Did the
đến
universe
cùng.
labor for nearly 14
Hãy tìm
billion years only
chỉ
to bring
một
forth a
trong
species
muôn
that
lý
would end up
do
as an enemy
để
to life
rời
itself
xa
and to its own
em.
kind?
Dẫu quá khứ
I
đuổi
don't
kịp
think so.
anh khi chạy trốn
My
thế
name is
giới
Foster
này,
Kemp,
cũng chẳng
and I
thể
have
làm
spent
em
nearly a
tan
lifetime trying to figure
biến
out
trong
what
tim
happened.
anh.
What is happening that could account for the staggering agony and deprivation on this planet? As a young man, driven by the misery I saw and by my fear for our survival, I set out on a journey, seeking to answer questions like, is it even possible for humans to thrive? If so, why aren't we? My research led me to places I never expected to go, revealing surprising discoveries that seemed unrelated at first, but which turned out to be crucially connected, as you'll see. I found a code, a pattern in nature that's been embedded in arts and icons throughout the centuries. I believe this code holds the key to a new source of clean, sustainable energy that could completely revolutionize the way all people live. I came to understand how our economic system is rigged, and I found out what we can do about it. My journey revealed ways we can claim our power to create liberating, healthy systems everywhere on Earth. I have realized that we are not a mistake. We are simply mistaken. We've been blinded to our brilliance, shorn of our strength, ignorant of our genius, unaware of our true power and magnificence.
Chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu
I invite you to share
như
with me
cái
the
cách
highlights
em
of
đã
my
xem
enlightening journey.
chuyện mình kết thúc
created this
mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến
to take us through
cùng.
time and
Hãy
space.
tìm
Let me show you
cho
around.
chỉ một trong muôn lý
On
do
this screen, we
để
can
rời
access what I
xa
call our
em.
vitals.
Dẫu
It's
quá
the
khứ
critical data
đuổi
we
kịp
don't
anh
get
khi
from
chạy
the
trốn trốn thế
media,
giới này
which in the
cũng
US has
chẳng thể làm
consolidated
em
from
tan
50
biến
companies down to
trong
5 in
tim
just over
anh.
25 years. We'll use this to check on how we're really doing. The right screen tracks how to chart a healthy, sustainable course for living on planet Earth. I call these the navigating insights.
Vương trên mi, sau những mệt nhòi vì
This will
ai
be our
ra
compass.
đi.
Instead of a needle seeking north in our Earth's magnetic field, our compass is the shape of the field itself. And that shape, as you will soon see, has amazing technological and social ramifications. After a lifetime quest, I've come to believe that this pattern actually holds the key to a world that works for everyone. So let's go.
Làm sao quên là điều rất khó. Anh biết xa em lại càng khó hơn. Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến. Anh chờ em ở nơi hoàng hôn tắt nước khi những ánh đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời. Hãy trả lời
I grew up in
anh
a
được
world of privilege and power, attending elite private
hãy
schools
tìm
and
trôi
international
chỉ một
As a
trong
direct
muôn lý
descendant
do
of the founders
để
of
ngừng
popular
yêu
I
em.
was groomed
Như
to be a
cái
leader
cách
in this
em đã
area,
xem chuyện mình
but I
kết
chose a
thúc
different path.
mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chưa trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em
Adults were
tan
teaching me that the way to protect
biến trong
myself from
tim
a nuclear
anh.
explosion was to duck under my desk and cover my head. That's when my serious questioning began. A couple of years later, I had a direct experience of universal energy. It happened one day when I was riding on a school bus, gazing out the window. I had a vision of a whirlpool pattern, and I just knew that the flow of energy I was seeing was the same in an atom as in our entire solar system. I felt deeply that I, too, was somehow made of that same pattern. This vision was what originally got me into science, into trying to figure out how the universe works and how we humans fit into the overall pattern of life energy. Years later, I learned that the pattern I saw is known by some in the scientific world. It turns out that in 1921, Albert Einstein got a Nobel Prize for discovering that when energy is released in the universe, there are little packets of wholeness that emerge. This pattern actually tells us a lot about how life evolves. Considering the enduring wonders of creation throughout the universe and how unsustainable so many of our human systems are, I figured learning how the universe creates and sustains life would actually be quite useful. Each of these little packets of wholeness that Einstein discovered, called quantum, is made out of its surroundings, but is distinct within it, like a whirlpool in water. These packets are always the same pattern, no matter what size, and they are surprisingly relevant to issues as seemingly disconnected as the wars in the Middle East, the global financial collapse, and how to achieve justice for everyone. We're about to explore how. Mathematicians call this pattern the torus. The energy in a torus flows in through one end, circulates around the center, and exits out the other side. It's balanced, self-regulating, and always whole. I was first officially introduced to the torus by scientist and inventor Arthur Young. Futurist Dwayne Elgin explains how the torus is the primary pattern that nature uses for life at every scale. The evolution
unfold, to roll out. So the question is, what is the universe rolling out? And what the universe is rolling out is self-organizing systems, and you can see this at every scale. A self-organizing system is a technical term for just a system getting a hold of itself, knowing itself essentially. And if you go to nature, we can look at and see these self-organizing forms throughout. We can see it in the cross-section of an orange, the cross-section of an apple. We can see it in the dynamic nature of a tornado. We can see it in the magnetic field. We can see it in the structure of a small atom. At every scale, throughout its entire history, the universe has one single project. It's growing towards it. The universe is a growing factory.
That goes from the center out to the edge of the galactic halo that surrounds them. Stars move from this galactic disk out to the halo, down the vortices, and back out again. Stars like Arcturus, for instance, we know have done that path already. That's the appropriate description even for the atmosphere of our planet. The weather goes from the North Pole down to the equator and then back up. From the South Pole up to the equator and then back down. Even the dynamics on the surface of the sun are very similar. Of course, here we're looking at it from an external perspective on a small-scale model. When you look at the solar system embedded in the galaxy, embedded in the cluster, embedded in the supercluster, we're traveling in this boundless sea of infinite torus flow.
Anh biết sai em lại càng khó hơn. Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Những cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
I became so excited by the potential of the toroidal energy form that in 1997 I co-founded a multidisciplinary think tank called the Sequoia Symposium to study the pattern and explore its applications. Our collected research convinced me that the torus and the vector equilibrium are primary patterns, fundamental to the creation of the universe at all scales. At the Sequoia Symposium gathering, I learned of inventors who claimed they were using the torus dynamic as the basis for devices that generated energy without combustion. This revolutionary development, accessing what's sometimes called zero-point or radiant or free energy, is now being called most simply new energy technology. Given that so much of the suffering in our world is the result of lack of access to energy, I realized that free, unlimited, clean energy
chỉ
would be
một
one of the
trong
greatest
muôn
breakthroughs in
lý do
history.
để ngừng
It
yêu
could not just improve,
em.
but actually
Như cái cách em
transform
đã
the quality
xem
of life on
chuyện
this
mình
planet.
kết thúc mà
So I
anh
began
vẫn
to
cố
wonder
chấp
who else
đến
knew about this
cùng.
pattern,
Hãy
or
tìm
about this powerful
trôi
potential energy
chỉ
source.
một trong muôn lý do
Some of the
để
scientists
rời
at the
xa
symposium showed me how
em.
the torus
Dẫu
has
quá
been
khứ
coded
đuổi kịp
Here we
soi
are at one
sáng
of the
bầu
world's
trời.
oldest sacred
Hãy
sites,
trả
the
lời
Osirian
anh được
Temple
không?
at Abydos, Egypt.
Hãy
Very
tìm
little
cho
writing is
chỉ
found in
một
the Zion
trong
Temple.
muôn lý do
However,
để ngừng
there is
yêu
one
em.
very
Như cái
significant
cách em đã
piece of
xem
information
mình
that
kết thúc mà anh
It
vẫn
is
cố
a
chấp
very
đến
plain
cùng.
but
Hãy
clear
tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Nassim has decoded the Osirian symbol in 3 dimensions. Since our world is not two-dimensional, it makes sense that codes relaying information about our world also wouldn't be limited to flat designs. His 3-dimensional version of the Osirian symbol starts with the vector equilibrium, a perfectly balanced force field with 12 equal energy lines radiating out. They stabilize its center like the 12 spokes of a wheel. The primary pattern of balanced energy flow around this structure is the torus. Here we expand to the next larger scale with a total of 64 pyramids called tetrahedra. If we then put spheres in, representing the toroidal energy field surrounding each of the pyramids, and then we drop away the pyramids, we end up with a matrix that is, amazingly, an exact overlay for the Osirian icon, a 3-dimensional model of the same pattern that was burned into the rock walls of the Egyptian temple thousands of years ago. Now we travel across continents, from Egypt to China, where the same geometry appears at another sacred site built in 1420.
Then you go to the Forbidden City, where the sun gods reside, and where you find at the entrance the food dogs, the guardians of the knowledge. They guard the knowledge under their paw.
The same geometry of 64 energy units is encoded again. I started wondering, is it just a coincidence that the exact same design appears in significant places on 2 different continents? But then Nassim showed me that this geometry of 64 is encoded time and again in cultures across the centuries and from all over the world. The Hebrew Kabbalistic tree of life creates the same structure we just saw, with the vector equilibrium again embedded at every level. The ancient Chinese system of wisdom called the I Ching is based on 64 hexagrams, symbols with 6 lines in a set, some continuous, some broken. These can be put together as the 6 edges of a tetrahedron, and together would form the 64 tetrahedral crystals.
Anh biết xa em lại càng khó hơn, mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
Talk about sun gods coming to the earth and teaching them
Khi những ánh đèn đường soi sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời anh được không?
All these sun gods
Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng
Could these early pilots from beyond our world be the ones responsible for sharing the knowledge of this code? Could they actually be tapping its power to propel themselves through the cosmos? This isn't where I thought my research would lead me, and these notions were rocking my world. But Nassim has impressive evidence to back up his theories, and I could see no other rational way advanced math and physics concepts would have been recorded over 3,000 years ago. I sought out one of the most knowledgeable investigators, Dr. Stephen Greer, the founder of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He's conducted hundreds of interviews with top-ranking government and military witnesses.
And so when we talk about extraterrestrial intelligence, we're talking about civilizations that have reached the point of being sentient like we are, but whose technologies and social capabilities are such that they've been able to become interstellar, interplanetary civilizations. And when you look at the fact that the most conservative estimates are in the Milky Way galaxy that there are at least 10,000 Earth-like planets that have intelligent life on them, and that at least half of them are likely to be as advanced or more than ours. It's almost a certainty that there's intelligent life out there that have mastered the laws of the universe beyond what's currently taught at MIT Caltech to be able to transfer through space-time in real time through vast distances of space. We have over 4,000 cases where these objects landed on terraform and left physical evidence. We have over 3,500 pilot cases. We have hundreds of cases, including ones from the highest-ranking investigator at the FAA, John Callahan, and numerous other operators where these objects have been tracked on radar going tens of thousands of miles per hour or dematerializing and then reappearing in another point in the sky.
Yes, there have been ET visitations, there have been crashed craft, there have been material and bodies recovered. We have contact with aliens, not originating from some foreign country, but from some other solar system. And I have been a party to that.
There were documents that I have seen that referred to Roosevelt having several instances of UFO flyovers, and particularly after they took out nuclear weapons. My SEAL told me
chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trái chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
Fires another beam of light, goes down like this, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. The time was that it must have been extraterrestrial. They took the film and they pulled off parts that had the UFO on
mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trái chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Out of all of the evidence for the existence of UFOs, one extraordinary phenomenon continues to astonish and inspire me. The appearance throughout the world of so-called crop circles. These elaborate designs appear mysteriously swirled into crops of grain in such a way that the stalks are bent over, yet remain alive. More than 5,000 of these patterns have appeared in over 30 countries, most of them in England. The media has led many people, including me at first, to write these crop patterns off as hoaxes, the nighttime work of a few pranksters. Of course, there have been faked versions, but those made by human hands are crude compared to the vast majority of these elegant creations. Could hoaxers have created all 5,000 of these patterns? Could a few people with ropes and boards have created something as complex and beautiful as this one, made in the dead of night in the driving rain and leaving no footprints in the soil? The electromagnetic field over the area where the crop's been laid down to create the image is often electrostatically charged. Some of these areas are littered with strange magnetic particles. One of the most amazing crop designs is not a circle, but a rectangle that seems to be a direct response to a message sent out into space in 1974. The message was a radio signal depicting our planet's location in our solar system and Earth's people, in hopes that it might be received and interpreted by an extraterrestrial intelligence. 27 years later, in 2001, this crop design appeared in England, along with what could be a self-portrait of the sender. This message matches the format of the NASA signal and describes a different solar system from ours, a picture of the sender, non-human DNA, and a microwave antenna they apparently used to communicate, rather than the radio antenna that we used. The antenna symbol had appeared a year earlier in exactly the same field, right next to a working radio wave antenna, like the one NASA used to send out the original signal. As the continues to officially deny extraterrestrial contact to any kind.
Mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm thấy chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
Here are some two-dimensional versions that seem to be revealing the torus in 3D.
Đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời anh được không? Hãy tìm thấy chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc, mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm thấy chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
Here is the vector equilibrium. And the related pattern of 64 that we saw encoded in the arts of so many ancient cultures. When I saw the coherence between the crop circles and the ancient encodings, I thought regardless of whoever created them and wherever they're from, there must be an important purpose to these designs. They're so coherent. I've come to believe that the pattern of the torus and the vector equilibrium, especially in the form of the 64 tetrahedron crystal, is showing us how energy works in the universe so that we can learn to align with it. I believe that they're giving us a model for accessing energy in a clean, safe, and limitless way, and a new means of propulsion. What more important message could there be to get to us, and especially now from their perspective, as we're beginning to extend our careless reach beyond our planet? I got
cái em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
I was startled to see her detailed sketches of the toroidal energy field that she said propelled the vehicle and protected the passengers. I subsequently interviewed James Gilliland. James has many hours of UFO footage from his ranch near Mount Adams in Washington state. He also claimed to have gone on board an alien spacecraft. What blew my mind was that he had never met Lynn Andrews and had no knowledge of her experience, yet he described a phenomenon that was amazingly similar. Numerous ships with spinning rings of light. Could it simply be coincidental that James and Lane described the same force dynamic, and that both of these people have been harassed extensively by government and military agencies? To some, the idea of UFOs may sound crazy,
mọi thứ trước mắt cứ dõi tung. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến. Anh chờ em ở nơi hoàng hôn tắt nét khi những ánh đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời. Hãy trả lời anh được không? Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
This could be the most important technology breakthrough of our times. So who wouldn't want to have an energy source that's unlimited and freely available? That turned out to be a key question. And that's what led me down the next rabbit hole. It turns out that scientists as far back as the early 1900s have been developing alternative ways to access electricity without combustion. Nikola Tesla believed he had tapped into what he called radiant energy. Many scientists believe he was accessing what's now called free energy. But before Tesla could finish the project, his financier, banker J.P. Morgan, who had a monopoly on the copper used for electrical lines, recognized how Tesla's invention could transmit electricity without wires. He then shut down Tesla's funding. Tesla's lab was burned down and he was ostracized, all for trying to implement his vision of unlimited energy for everyone.
Anh biết sai em lại càng khó hơn, mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Rotating in space, we're basically talking about a magnet which is rotating in space. And the lines of flux of the magnet are pouring down and through in this toroidal pattern of the magnetic field. It's also expanding, contracting. It's breathing. It's taking in the energy of space literally and transforming it right here in this toroid, we have enough energy to transform the entire Earth. And that's not just a theoretical statement, it's literally true. If you contemplate the implications of this, it means that every single place on Earth suddenly has power. Every single person on Earth suddenly has power. We have universal abundance. Trombley had been invited to demonstrate one of his generators at the United Nations and the U.S. Senate. But these events were undermined by the first Bush administration. Then the device itself was taken in a government raid.
Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến. Anh chờ em ở nơi hoàng hôn tan nắng. Khi những ánh đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời anh được không? Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Not only created some free energy batteries, but also used Tesla's theories to counter gravity, to make objects float. This could revolutionize the field of propulsion. His lab was raided and equipment was taken by police and government officials in 1978, 1989, and again in 2000. One of the scientists we were going to interview for this film was Dr. Eugene Malov, an engineer from MIT and Harvard, and editor of Infinite Energy magazine, which covers both theoretical and technological developments in the new energy field. Dr. Malov was mysteriously beaten to death in 2004. If these inventors were all hoaxers and charlatans, I wondered, why are they being suppressed so consistently and so brutally? I asked free energy inventor Adam Trombley why he thought this technology was being suppressed and if the UFO phenomenon was related.
We've had major military people at great risk to themselves say, yes, these things are real. Why do you think the military-industrial complex doesn't want that statement to be made? Because you start thinking about what kind of technology is behind that. That's the bottom line. The suppression of UFO phenomena is hand-in-hand with the suppression of so-called free energy.
Chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Unfortunately, it's someone's $200 trillion piggy bank. The proven oil and gas and coal reserves are worth north of $200 trillion. This information coming out would completely change geopolitical power more than anything since the weather reporting history.
I started to examine the breakthrough solutions, and much to my surprise, these concepts have been proven in hundreds of laboratories throughout the world, and yet they have not really seen the light of day.
Rather than smashing things together and trying to control the explosion, these new technologies
rối tung. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý chấp đến
You don't
cùng.
have to believe
Hãy
in free
tìm
energy
trói
technology. You can
chỉ
learn
một
about the
trong
progression of
muôn
ideas
lý
and
do
inventions.
để rời
I
xa
found myself
em.
thinking, what better
Dẫu
way to
quá khứ
justify
đuổi
our
kịp anh
dependence on
khi
oil,
chạy trốn thế giới này cũng
other
chẳng thể
dangerous,
làm em
dirty
tan
technologies,
biến.
and to claim there are no better, cheaper alternatives.
Anh chờ
It was my
em
beloved
ở
wife and
nơi
creative
hoàng
partner,
hôn
Kimberly,
tắt nắng.
who kept bringing me back to
Khi
the
những
human
ánh
implications
đèn
of my
đưa
scientific
soi
research.
sáng bầu trời, hãy
For
trả
me, as
lời anh
intriguing
được
as the tourists and ETs and free
không?
energy are,
Hãy
the
tìm
most compelling
trói
question was,
chỉ
would
một trong muôn
understanding
lý
these
do
things really help
để ngừng
alleviate
yêu
human
em. Như cái
And it
cách
turns
em đã
out it
xem
can't.
chuyện mình kết
So
thúc
much of the pain
mà
on
anh
the
vẫn cố
planet
chấp
has to do with
đến
the lack of access to
cùng. Hãy
energy.
tìm
Can you
trói
stay
chỉ
warm?
một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em
There is a
tan
fundamental
biến
pattern which
trong
makes
tim
sense to me that
anh.
evolution would be efficient in that way. And we can align with that pattern to create new technologies that will solve these problems. Then it's worth it to me to open my mind to these socially taboo subjects.
If the new energy technologies were to be set free worldwide, the change would be profound. It would affect everybody. It would be applicable everywhere. These technologies are absolutely the most important thing that's happened in the history of the world.
So given the stakes, I decided to ask who's benefiting from suppressing scientific research? Whose wealth and power are threatened by access to clean, free energy? Who has a motive to set up a world where so few have so much and so many have so little? As an independent researcher, I followed one of the cardinal rules of investigative journalism. If a story doesn't make sense, follow the money.
Lưu chung nơi những khung hình cho ngàn ấy năm từng chuyện buồn vui ta có. Anh biết
Our being dependent on oil ensures that energy corporations continue to reap phenomenal profits. I see them committing huge resources to undermine energy alternatives,
mọi thứ
to
trước mắt cứ
control
rối
global
tung.
reserves, and to
Hãy tìm
maintain high oil prices.
trói chỉ
They
một
have
trong
enough
muôn
money and
lý
influence
do
to suppress
để
anything
ngừng
that
yêu
might threaten their
em.
monopoly.
Như cái
So
cách
who's
em đã
behind the
xem
huge energy
chuyện mình
corporations?
kết thúc mà anh
The
vẫn cố
Rockefeller's
chấp
oil
đến
empire got started in
cùng. Hãy
1870
tìm
when John D. Rockefeller
trói
founded
chỉ
Standard
một
Oil
trong
and became
muôn lý
America's
do
first
để
billionaire.
rời xa
Standard Oil
em.
has since
Dẫu quá
morphed
khứ
into
đuổi kịp
ExxonMobil
anh
and
khi
others.
chạy trốn thế giới này
And the
cũng
Rockefellers
chẳng thể
control
làm
our
em
food as
tan
well.
biến
They were
trong
primarily
tim
responsible for the
anh.
global shift to large-scale petroleum-based agriculture. I remember the so-called Green Revolution of the 1960s and 70s. Like most people, I thought it was a great thing. It was, however, based on the planting of huge plots with a single crop, using vast amounts of oil-based fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. The Green Revolution was the brainchild of the Rockefeller Foundation's Natural Science Division in partnership with large agricultural corporations. Petroleum-based agriculture provided vast new profits for the oil industry, but never lived up to its promises of ending hunger and promoting health. The Green Revolution did at first increase productivity because every bit of soil was being used for immediate production, but its true cost can now be seen.
Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ
Taxpayers
rối
paid
tung.
billions in
Hãy
subsidies,
tìm
and giant
trói
agribusiness
chỉ một
corporations,
trong muôn
small
lý
family
do
farms,
để
and
ngừng
all
yêu
but
em. Như cái cách
Biodiversity
em
is
đã xem
destroyed,
chuyện mình
toxic
kết thúc
chemicals poison
mà
farm
anh vẫn cố
workers,
chấp đến
land,
cùng.
water,
Hãy tìm
and our food supply,
trói
endangering
chỉ
the
một
health of us
trong
all.
muôn lý
As
do
of
để rời
2010,
xa
approximately
em.
1 in every
Dẫu
7
quá
people
khứ đuổi kịp
worldwide
anh
did
khi
not
chạy
have
trốn
enough
thế
to
giới
eat.
này cũng chẳng thể làm em
Giant
tan
corporations were
biến.
not as chemicals for chemical industrial agriculture, and they were talking about three instruments to consolidate the food chain. The first was
Khi những
chemical
ánh
engineering
đèn
as a way of
đưa
control.
soi sáng bầu trời,
The
hãy
second
trả
was
lời
licensing
anh được
packaging
không?
life as a way of control, declaring
Hãy
seeds to
tìm
breed life
trói chỉ một trong
the
muôn
saving
lý
of
do
soil by
để
farmers
ngừng
as a
yêu
crime, as a
em.
pledge
Như
of
cái
the
cách
development
em đã xem
and the
chuyện
dependence of humanity on a handful of corporations is the ultimate step in this. We are, through what we are doing with SEED, literally for the first time, creating a new colonization, which I call the colonization of the future.
So in two crucial areas, energy and food, the same elite banking families and their corporations have taken control, and the consequences have been devastating. For me, it was overwhelming at first to discover such a monopoly of influence, but I knew it was important. Like learning you have a tough but treatable disease, it helps to understand what's causing it and how it operates if the goal is to cure it. So I continued my investigation. If oil and food are controlled by the big banking families, where else does their influence show up? As I followed the money, I began to see this same pattern of control in just about every area of our lives. And I always found the same families in charge, either directly through their banks and corporations or indirectly through their major foundations. Again, it was the Rockefellers who created the National Education Association, with help from the Carnegie Foundation and later from the Ford Foundation. What the captains of industry wanted from our schools was an obedient and docile workforce who would be manageable employees and eager consumers.
Schools are to establish fixed habits of response to authority. That's why it takes 12 years. You're to respond reflexively when anyone in a position of authority tells you what to do.
Like education, health is yet another area dominated by big money and corporations. The American Medical Association, for example, is largely funded by the Rockefellers, who use their funding to influence AMA research and decision-making.
The average MD in 4 years of medical school takes one course in nutrition, 2.5 hours in many cases. And the materials used, the curriculum materials, are supplied by the National Dairy Council and the National Livestock Meat Board and other industries, including the Sugar Association, with products to sell that actually undermine our health in the first place.
Unfortunately, the way the system of medicine is set up, medical education is primarily funded by pharmaceutical companies. So there's a motive to make and sell as many drugs as possible. It's also a very time-effective way of making money for the physician, for the pharmaceutical company, for the whole medical establishment. But it's really perpetuating the problems it was meant to
mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
In the 1920s, Dr. Rife invented the most advanced microscopes of his time. He also developed a new technique he called coordinated resonance, which was apparently able to destroy cancerous tumors as well as viruses. In 1934, in clinical trials of 4 years in two southern California, Rife's treatment was tested on 16 cancer patients. Within 3 months, they were all successfully cured. All but forgotten.
It was really hard for me to consider that someone might actually be suppressing cures. And cancer has run through my family like a raging river. I found out that it's all about patents. If a pharmaceutical company can patent and make money from treatment, especially one that we have to keep on using, then that's what we get. Otherwise, we don't even hear about it. It's not just Rife who got shut down. Reen Case had an old Indian Ojibwe formula that was effective. Harry Hoxsey and Max Gerson had natural remedies that worked. But you know, if you go and you look them up, the AMA makes them sound like complete quacks. And that's where following the money has been so helpful, because the same powers who control the AMA and their research and funding control the pharmaceuticals. So there's a multi-trillion-dollar financial incentive to suppress cures that can't be patented. Knowing that cures exist has not taken away the anguish I feel from losing so many people I love to cancer. It's given me something really satisfying to do with the pain. And I believe when we take the love and devotion that we have for everyone who's died and who will die unnecessarily, and direct it to developing and getting these cures out to people who need them, we can break this cancer legacy.
Chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
But over virtually every aspect of our lives. And they do it by controlling the world of finance. Not by creating more value, but by actually controlling the source of money. When I followed the money, I found that it took me up the levels of a pyramid. Here we are at the bottom level going about our daily lives. Above us is government, people who are given a monopoly on force and use it to tax and control us whether or not we agree. But who controls them? At the next level are the corporations. Many would say that there's now corporations and not nation-states that rule the world. They call it a corporatocracy. To acquire the world's resources and control the markets, this corporatocracy must have access to cheap money. The big corporations get their loans at special rates from the big banks, which means that those who control the major banks, the money elite, ultimately control the corporations. As I've followed the money, I've learned that almost everything I once believed about is simply not
kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
What actually happens is you ask for £50,000, they type into your account £50,000. That's all they do. They don't mint any coins, they don't print any money, they don't move any precious metal anywhere, they just put £50,000 into your account and you can do this for from the moment you start paying interest on money that does not
Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
In the U.S., it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit $10,000 into the bank sets aside 10%, or $1,000, and then loans out the rest of your money. The way it works is, say another person comes into the bank and asks for a car loan of $9,000. At this moment, the bank loans out the $9,000 from your original deposit. It isn't there anymore. The borrower then pays the person selling the car, and they go deposit the money into another bank, which is part of the same central banking system. This $9,000 is treated as a new deposit, and the process continues. The money gets redeposited and reloaned until the initial deposit of $10,000 becomes $100,000. The banking system just created $90,000 by loaning out your money. Apparently it began with the goldsmiths in the 17th century, when people were trading in gold. Gold was heavy to carry around, so people stored the actual metal in vaults and traded receipts instead. Those receipts were the first paper money. Since only a few people would withdraw their gold at any given time, vault owners, basically the new bankers, began creating receipts for more metals than they actually held. They loaned out those receipts and charged interest on money, gold, that they didn't really have. That's how our so-called fractional reserve system was born. In this system, the bankers get to make up money out of nothing, while the rest of us have to work hard to earn it. It has created a modern form of serfdom where the massive society is now working to pay off their debt to the banks. Under this fractional reserve scheme, we inevitably become debt slaves to a ruling class of financial elite, not because they are better or smarter than anyone else, but because they have rigged the system to benefit themselves at the expense of most people on the planet. Catherine Austin Fitts is an expert on this issue. She was an Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President George Bush Sr. and then an advisor to the Clinton administration.
Let's set up a game of Monopoly. We want to buy Park Place. What I can continually do is just print money, give myself more money, lower the value of your money by printing more. No matter how hardworking you are or how successful you are, I can always end up buying it for free.
So how come if you or I make up money, it's called counterfeiting? But if the banks do it, it's increasing the money supply. How did the banks get this power? This is Jack and whereas 1910, representatives from Rothschild, Morgan, and other private bankers gathered secretly to draft the legislation that would create the Federal Reserve. Ed Griffin literally wrote the book on what happened at Jekyll Island.
Central banks are banking cartels which have been running the markets of the respective governments in the countries where they operate. And they've been given monopolistic power creation of commerce. That's what the politicians have to as a gift to the partnership. Now, in return, what the bankers do for politicians, they promise to create money out of nothing. But they've got this new power to do it anytime the government needs it.
And since 2008, we witnessed the greatest fake money printing run in recorded history. This financial sleight of hand disguises the costs, hides who's to blame, and leaves us as debt slaves working to pay off the bill. I found it revealing that in the same year the Federal Reserve was founded, 1913, the Internal Revenue Service was also established. An income tax was then instigated so you and I would have to pay the politicians' debt plus interest to the bankers.
The problem is we have a privately owned central bank system in the United States disguised as a government-owned system. Now, if you look in the telephone book here in the Washington, D.C. area, you look up for Federal Reserve in the blue government pages, it's not there. It's in the white pages right next to Federal Express. It's a privately owned central bank.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
We have a private bank that prints money on behalf of the Treasury. The Federal Reserve prints money on a debt-based system which creates scarcity. But it puts a group of insiders in a position of having access to all the data about the economy when we don't. So you have a small group of bankers who understand the data on how the money works in the economy. And it gives them the ability to print money in a way that the insiders are protected and everybody else is drained.
Catherine went on to compare a healthy economy to a vibrant torus, balanced, freely flowing, and energized throughout, in contrast to what's happening in our current economy.
What what you have is a system that's very dynamic, and it's trying to optimize. But intertwined in the core of it, you have a tapeworm. The way a tapeworm works in your body is it injects a chemical into your body that makes you crave what's good for the tapeworm and bad for you. You have a parasite that's very much manipulating and engorging itself at the expense of the whole.
We live in a tapeworm economy, where the financial elite are the tapeworm, and they're feeding on us. And they don't like it when people blow their cover. After Catherine began exposing government corruption at the highest levels, the FBI raided her company and seized its assets. She was dragged through the courts for 10 years before being found guilty. So we've got the Federal Reserve, a privately owned corporation with a monopoly on creating money, but with no accountability, backed up by a government with no force. The country got sold on the Fed as an institution that helped stabilize the economy and lead into politics. Something close to a century of existence, the Federal Reserve has done just the opposite. Since they took charge, we've been robbed through inflation, and the purchasing power of the dollar has declined more than 96%. And the wealthy makes it clear most of the money is going to a very few. A similar scenario played out in the 2008 financial collapse, with the same bankers benefiting. In the years leading up to the collapse, the biggest banks, including Bank of America, Citigroup, and Chase, controlled by the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Morgans, were bundling and trading bad loans that they knew would eventually fail. It's like putting rotten oranges in a box and selling them as grade AAA. The bundlers of the debt knew it was only a matter of time before someone would open that box and see that the content was worthless, since they were the ones who packed the boxes in the first place. When the rotten oranges, what we hear about as unsound loans, derivatives, and credit default swaps, were finally discovered, everyone was impacted. People lost their homes, their jobs, their businesses, and their retirements. Meanwhile, the biggest banks who created the problem in the first place were the ones who got bailed out. Why is that? Why would the Federal Reserve give trillions to the banks, even though the majority of Americans were against bailing them out? And why not help those most in need rather than the perpetrators of the financial collapse? My research led me to believe that the same people who created the Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the Morgans, still control it, and they use this scheme to bail themselves out at our expense.
Trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim
scheme designed and executed by the big bankers to consolidate wealth and power. David Icke explains how he sees the Federal Reserve rigging the so-called business cycles.
Stage one, it's like throwing a fishing line out. Stage one, you put lots of money, units of exchange, into circulation. You do this by pushing interest rates down, by making lots of loans. This is the part of the cycle we call a boom. Because there's lots of units of exchange in circulation, there's lots of money changing hands. That generates lots of economic activity. That generates jobs. And as more and more money is spent, there's more demand. So companies take out more loans of fresh air money to increase their
Anh biết
production.
xa em lại
People get
càng khó
confident in their
hơn.
everyday lives.
Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
And not being circulated in buying things. Suddenly, there's nothing like as much money in circulation, and therefore,
soi sáng bầu trời. Hãy trả lời anh được
go down in terms of their profits. They start to shed jobs, and they start to get out of business. People lose their jobs, they can't pay the mortgage anymore of the big house they took out in the good times. Now, what the banks are doing is starting to reopen fishing line out, fishing line back, lots of units in circulation pull them in, has been going on for centuries. And what it's done, it's stolen and accumulated the real wealth of the world in the hands of the few.
At the international level, central bankers use the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to make more money while exploiting the resources of countries they lend to, bankrupting them in the process. The central bank of central banks is the Rothschild-created Bank for International Settlements. The elite are positioning themselves to control access to virtually everything we need to survive.
No matter where you go in the world, the money is controlled by the banking system. They decide if people eat or if they don't eat. Who's a billionaire and who lives on less than $1 a day? He who controls the money controls the world, and a very few control the money.
Anh biết xa em lại càng khó hơn. Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
I kept running across compelling evidence and credible experts saying that the secret agenda of the banking elite is nothing less than total global domination. At first, I resisted the idea, but I was committed to finding out what was keeping us from thriving, no matter where it might be. One night, I woke up at 3 a.m. with a burning question. If this small group wanted to dominate the entire world, what would they need to control to accomplish it? I jumped out of bed and started making a list. First and foremost, they have to control money, and they do.
Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
But its open status is being attacked from all sides. governments, corporations, and the
Khi những
United
ánh
Nations
đèn
are all
đưa
attempting to take
soi
control.
sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời hãy được
Consent has to be controlled. They need to take away our
hãy
rights,
tìm
spy on ordinary
cho
citizens,
chỉ
and
một
track
trong
every
muôn
aspect
lý
of their
do
lives.
để ngừng yêu em như
As the
cái
day
cách
dawned,
em
I
đã
knew
xem
that a powerful
mình
elite had
kết
almost
thúc
everything set up to
mà
rule
anh
the
vẫn
world.
cố chấp
And I
đến
had the
cùng.
frightening realization
Hãy
that
tìm
big brother
cho
was just coming.
chỉ
He's here
một
now.
trong muôn lý do
Already in the
để
making.
rời xa
So how do we get out?
em sau quá
To
khứ
envision
đuổi
that,
kịp
I
anh
realized
khi
I
chơi
needed to
trốn thế
discover
giới
what their
này
belief structure looks
chẳng
like
thể
and how
làm
it
em
works.
tan
A
biến
relatively small
trong
group of
tim
families,
anh.
especially the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, and Carnegies, along with the Harrimans, the Schiffs, and the Warburgs, have been leading the controlling elite in the West for generations. I'm not implying that every individual in these families is aware of or active in the global domination agenda. However, I'm convinced the heads of these dynasties control the corporate and banking interests that carry out the sinister scheme that is destroying so many lives. Those secretly driving the agenda have been known by many names. Leaked reports confirm that they meet throughout the world behind closed doors to discuss their agenda. Then, like clockwork, their plans begin to show up in the media, finance, corporate, government, and military arenas. Of course, not everyone involved in these groups is in on the decision-making. There is a hierarchy of knowledge and participation. One of the primary symbols of the controlling elite is the all-seeing eye. It's on the dollar bill. It's on the American mass surveillance system initially called Total Information Awareness. It's on the British intelligence agency MI5. And it even oversees the Supreme Court complex in Israel, designed and funded entirely by the Rothschilds. I believe they've taken the majestic image of the Cheops pyramid and its legendary metallic capstone and perverted the meaning to represent those at the top, being able to track and control all those under them.
Mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm
One
trói
of the
chỉ
painful
một
ways this
trong
information
muôn
has been
lý
used
do để
is by
rời
people who
xa
want to promote
em.
anti-Semitism.
Dẫu quá khứ
They
đuổi kịp
wrongly
anh
call this
khi
a
chạy
Jewish
trốn
agenda
thế giới
to
này
continue the
cũng
ongoing
chẳng thể
racism
làm
that
em tan
undermines
biến
and destroys so many
trong
lives.
tim anh.
Let me be clear. This is definitely not a Jewish agenda. It's been documented that central bankers even funded both sides of World War II, as well as some of the corporations associated with Hitler's atrocities against the Jews. Since these people have more money than their families would need for generations, and since they have the power to create money, I don't believe wealth is their end goal.
After you have all the material things that you could possibly want in life, what is left to excite you? And for many people, the answer is power. They became intellectually elite. They began to think that they had a plan that was better than anybody else's plan. They got the idea that freedom is dangerous. If you give people freedom, you know what? They're probably not going to use it wisely like we think they should. We are smarter than they are. And for their own good, we should rule them.
As I came to accept the idea of ruling elite planning for total global domination, I began to hear these same people actually talking more boldly and publicly about it. Only they call it the new world order.
Significantly different and radically new challenges in the world order can be created if the great opportunity.
Khi những ánh đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời hãy được không?
Given the condition of our world, a new
Hãy
world
tìm
order can seem like a great idea.
chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc, mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này, chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim
Democrats or Republicans, the liberals or conservatives who are the problem, when both parties are ultimately serving the same plan. I believe we're heading toward a totalitarian world authority, actually a military dictatorship, run by a tiny elite who have all the power and make all the rules. If they succeed, there'll be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Think about it.
The whole notion of conspiracy has been so ridiculed that it's socially challenging just to consider it. And there's always a reasonable sounding story to explain any one incident on its own. I personally used to try to justify how the same people consistently ended up with more money and more control by thinking they must just be taking advantage of the situation, but not actually causing it. But after nearly a decade of putting the issues and the evidence together, I am convinced it is not random, and that a few very powerful banking families and their political and corporate partners do have an agenda to dominate and control the rest of us. Once I got the reality and the scope of the agenda, I really had to think, how much do I want to know about this? Do I want to focus on the worst of what human beings are capable of? I decided it is worth knowing who these people are and how their organizations operate. Because on the other side of the rage and the sadness, are clarity and strength, the power we have to focus our efforts effectively, now that we understand what's really going on.
The greatest prison that people live in is the fear of what other people think. What happened to me as a result of all the ridicule I went through is that I stepped out of the fear of what other people thought. And it's only when you do it that you realize what a prison you lived in before. And what it gave me was a personal understanding of how easy it is for a few to control the many. All you have to do is dictate the norms in society, what is considered right and wrong, moral and immoral, good and bad, sane and insane, possible and impossible. And build what I call a hassle-free zone. And if you live your life within that zone of perception, belief, and what you say and think, then people will leave you alone because you're normal. Once you step out of that pen and you start to express your uniqueness, what the Illuminati have created is a whole human population of prisoners who are jumping on those that are stepping out of the and it's interesting when you get to the edge of that hassle-free zone, what you say is that you're not thinking, if I do what I creating the norms, they have created an absolute army of people to impose those norms on each other. Their global
dominance is already being implemented. They are carving up the world into superstates that transcend national boundaries, so they're easier for them to manage. They have already established the European Union and the African Union. Politicians from the United States, Pacific Union is already in process. This is the organizational chart for global tyranny, the structure for complete control. Here are two of the most powerful men in Europe talking about moving to a single world government.
It is extremely important that we, in this new ownership of global governance, have, particularly on both sides of the Atlantic, the implementation of the same rules in the same fashion.
2009 is also the first year of global governance with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis.
On the international level, the central banking elite have put huge organizations in place to implement their policies, including the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. John Perkins is a man who knows from decades of his own experience as a so-called economic hitman how the collusion of banks, corporations, and governments has taken over countries around the world.
We use many techniques, but probably the most common is that we'll go to a country that has resources that our corporations covet, like oil, and we'll arrange a huge loan to that country from an organization like the World Bank or one of its sisters. But almost all of the money goes to U.S. corporations, not to the country itself. Corporations like Bechtel and Halliburton, General Motors, General Electric, these types of organizations. And they build huge infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, highways, ports, industrial parks, things that serve the very rich and seldom even reach the poor. In fact, the poor suffer because the loans have to be repaid, and they're huge loans, and the repayment of them means that the poor won't get education, health, and other social services, and the country is left holding a huge debt by intention. We go back, we economic hitmen, to this country and say, look, you owe us a lot of money, you can't repay your debts, so give us a pound of flesh. As soon as one of these anti-American presidents is elected, one of us goes in and says, hey, congratulations, Mr. President. Now that you're president, I just want to tell you that I can make you very, very rich, you and your family. It's several $100 million in this pocket. If you play the game our way, if you decide not to, or in this pocket I've got a gun with a bullet with your name on it, in case you decide to keep your campaign promises, sell our oil companies or oil real cheap, or vote with us at the next UN vote, or send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world such as Iraq. And in that way we've managed to build a world empire with very few people actually knowing that we've done this.
Like many people, I thought a conspiracy for global domination could not really work, because basically they were just not that competent. I thought there's no way they could pull off such a scheme at the necessary level of
chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
Still, I wondered how could something that is so big and corrupt be kept secret?
It's
Khi những
a
ánh
simple
đèn
structure, and if it
đưa
wasn't
soi
simple, it
sáng
wouldn't
bầu
work.
trời, hãy trả lời hay hãy được không?
If you look at any organization
Hãy
today,
tìm
from
cho
the
chỉ
transnational
một trong
corporation,
muôn lý
university,
do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem rằng mình kết thúc, mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong
Now they
tim
don't know
anh.
what the bank manager behind them knows and is discussing. They only know what they need to know to do their job. The bank manager in the office behind them, he doesn't know or she doesn't know what's happening at the next level, and they don't know what's happening at the next level. And eventually you've got a tiny few people at the peak of the pyramid of that banking structure. They're the only ones that know what the real agenda of the bank is and what the direction is that they're going and why.
This kind of compartmentalization explains how the Manhattan Project, which developed the atom bomb in World War II, was kept secret despite having 130,000 people working on it.
When I first let in the scale and the intentions of the agenda, I felt like I had the flu for about 2 weeks. But then it dawned on me. Here was this well-planned, well-orchestrated attempt to squelch human potential, and still our brilliance shines through. Even though we've been systematically distracted and repressed, people have come up with innovative, ingenious solutions to a huge number of the problems that we face. It's not our fault that we didn't recognize how organized and intentional the scheme is. It's our challenge.
Anh biết sai em lại càng khó
I looked
hơn.
at the kind
Mọi
of
thứ
world
trước
the
mắt cứ
controlling elite
rối
have already
tung.
given us. And I
Hãy
had to
tìm
ask, what kind of
chỉ
world would we be
một
living
trong
in if
muôn
they had
lý do kết
world
thúc
order of theirs,
mà
a
anh
tiny
vẫn cố
number
chấp
of people would
đến
exercise
cùng.
total control
Hãy tìm
over the lives of
trói
everyone
chỉ
through
một
a system of
trong
intrusive
muôn lý do
surveillance,
để rời
violent
xa
suppression of
em.
dissent, and death
Dẫu
slavery.
quá khứ đôi kịp anh
Imagine
khi chạy
tiny
trốn thế
islands of
giới này
opulence surrounded
cũng
by a
chẳng
sea
thể
of
làm
misery,
em tan biến
where the mission of the
trong
military is
tim
to protect the haves from the have-nots. I've come to believe that their endgame is truly ominous, and that they will stop at nothing to continue implementing their plan. As difficult as it may be for Americans to accept, I'm now convinced the agenda of the global elite includes destroying the financial strength and sovereignty of the United States. With its history of free speech and armed revolt, America represents the major hurdle to global consolidation of power. If they can succeed in bringing down this country, I believe the international elite intend to transfer the power and productivity of Americans to their one-world dictatorship, gradually taking over our lives in what David Icke calls the totalitarian tiptoe. Think about it. They've got us so deep in debt we can never repay it. The collapsing the dollar, and they're attempting to replace it with a global IMF currency. This press for a global cashless electronic currency would enable a central authority to financially disable any individual or group.
Mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng.
Now, for the first
Hãy
time in
tìm
history,
trói
international taxes
chỉ
are being
một
proposed
trong
under
muôn
the
lý
pretext
do
of addressing
để
climate
rời
change.
xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đôi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
Appeal to our concern for the environment while distracting us from the fact that this unprecedented carbon tax would be paid to the
Khi những
World Bank
ánh
and
đèn
enforced
đường
by global
soi
police.
sáng bầu trời,
There
hãy
are ways
trả
to
lời
address our
anh hãy
obvious
được
need to curtail pollution without creating a tax
hãy
base for
tìm
tyranny.
trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đôi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
And at this point, problem reaction solution would fall down if we had a media that was in any way related to journalism. Instead, the mainstream media is a public relations office for the official version of events.
Turns out President George W. Bush was right about Saddam Hussein hiding weapons of mass destruction.
The virtually only way or source of information that the public have about this event is from the mainstream media. And what they're looking at stage 2 of problem reaction solution is the reaction of outrage of key fear. And they want the public to say to the government, something must be done, this can't go on, what are you going to do about it? And this allows stage 3, which is those who created the problem, glean that public reaction with a false story to then openly offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves created.
The idea of using tragedy, manufactured or simply utilized, was deeply significant in my finally understanding how far these people will go to achieve their goals. It's a documented fact that we entered the Vietnam War under false pretenses. Former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara has acknowledged that the attack on a ship in the Gulf of Tonkin didn't actually take place. Our judge argued that we've been attacked today, which wrong.
Xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đôi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Was a false flag operation by the global elite in order to set the stage for taking over Middle East oil and dismantling U.S. constitutional protections.
There are lives in the valleys. There are people under fire. There are children at the camp. There is blood on the wire.
đâu. Nếu bước đầu mình vừa vàng vừa qua nhau để đưa tình người chẳng có thêm sau. Còn anh với nỗi nhớ đông
Most of what's
đầy,
needed for a
anh
police
ước chỉ
state
em
is
biết
actually
anh
already in place. Right now in
để
America,
em yêu
any of us can be in
nỗi
prison
đau
without
khi
warning or
phải
due
làm
cause, and we
sao.
can be kidnapped,
Quên là
tortured,
điều
and
rất
assassinated
khó.
legally if the government decides what we are doing is a threat to
Anh
their
biết
plan.
xa
All
em
they
lại
have to
càng
do is
khó
name us as a
hơn.
suspect
Mọi
in
thứ
their
trước mắt
so-called
cứ
war on
soi
terror.
tụ. Hãy
We're
tìm
being watched more and
trói
more.
chỉ một
In
trong
2010,
muôn
there were
lý
30
do
million
để
surveillance
ngừng
cameras
yêu
recording us in the US
em.
alone.
Như cái cách em đã
When we
xem
demonstrate,
chuyện
we're now
mình kết
relegated to what are
thúc
euphemistically
mà anh
called
vẫn cố
free
chấp
speech
đến
zones.
cùng.
Zones
Hãy
for free
tìm
speech.
trói chỉ một
Every
trong
phone
muôn
call and
lý
email we
do
send is
để
collected
rời
and
xa
archived and can be
em.
inspected at
Do
any
quá
time.
khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy
Our
trốn
driver's
thế giới
licenses
này
and passports
cũng
have
chẳng
computer
thể
chips
làm em
implanted
tan
in them
biến.
to track our every move. And now hospital patients are getting these same chips implanted under their skin. In fact, it was Procter & Gamble who developed these chips, initially for tracking their
Hãy
products.
trả lời anh
It's
được
always offered as a way to help. But even an assistant director of Central Intelligence has admitted it's an exit point to getting all of us chipped for better tracking and control.
như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc
These would-be
mà anh vẫn cố
controls to
chấp
a
đến
US space mission
cùng.
have
Hãy
outlined
tìm
plans for
trói
full-spectrum
chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Do quá khứ đuổi anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong
I
tim
believe they are
anh.
also trying to ensure they can deal effectively with any resistance. FEMA containment camps and railroad cars with shackles have been recently constructed or refurbished all over the United States for use in what officials call times of pandemic or civil unrest. There's one more brutal realization about the global domination agenda that I need to share. This was a horrible one for me to grasp, but without it, this inquiry would be dangerously incomplete, and our solution strategies would be inadequately informed. In my research, I came across convincing evidence that their plan actually includes the elimination of the majority of the world's population. As sick as it sounds, it makes sense that they would be better positioned to succeed in their quest for absolute control if there are fewer of us to manage. Every time I thought they wouldn't do that, I discovered I was wrong. I found startling documentation that eugenics is one of the core pillars of their plan. Eugenics is the practice where some people get to decide who's worthy to breed and who's not. Sterilization is one of the many insidious ways this covert plan is being implemented.
Chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Do quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
To further the racial supremacy agenda later adopted by Hitler. In 2007, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Homeland Security funded a proposed project to aerial spray over 7 million people in urban areas of Northern California. After citizens organized against the plan, officials were forced to reveal that the spray included multiple toxins that can cause disease and disrupt the reproductive cycle. Fortunately, civil resistance stopped the project. The U.S. government has been caught over 30 times covertly experimenting with toxic chemicals on its own citizens, from soldiers, prisoners, and Native American reservations to entire towns and counties. Mass covert sterilization of women and girls, usually using secret additives to vaccines, has been exposed in Brazil, Puerto Rico, Nicaragua, Mexico, and the Philippines. These have been under the auspices of such programs as John D. Rockefeller's population council,
chuyện
of
mình
Health,
kết
Education
thúc
and Welfare,
mà anh vẫn
where
cố
Nelson
chấp
Rockefeller was
đến
Undersecretary.
cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
That would render male consumers infertile. This was quietly announced as a contribution to the world overpopulation problem.
Khi những
The list
ánh
goes
đèn
on
đưa
and on.
soi sáng bầu trời,
Right now,
hãy
global
trả
human
lời
control is in
anh được không?
I'm convinced that this is no accident.
Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em, như cái cách em đã xem mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
This is what depopulation looks like today. I'm convinced that I'm not overstating the case. Could I be wrong? Perhaps. But what if I'm not? We are at a critical fork in the road in human evolution. One road is leading toward tyranny and possible self-destruction. The other would lead us to a peaceful, healthy civilization based on honoring the rights and freedom of every single person on the planet.
Nơi căn phòng hiu hắt mình anh thu xếp những kỷ niệm.
To set off in this new direction, it's up to you and me to clear that road. The time has come to say enough. There is another way. I believe that together we have the knowledge, the resources, and the solutions to meet that challenge.
Ấy năm từng chuyện buồn vui ta có, anh biết quên là điều rất khó.
I see this process as nothing less than a struggle for the soul of humanity.
Mọi thứ trước mắt
It
cứ
begins with
rối
a shift in
tung.
worldview.
Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em, như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
I believe when people are healthy and have what we need to survive, we can create a world based on integrity, freedom, and compassion. A world where everyone can thrive. Which of these two views will shape our future? That's our choice now.
Anh cố tìm kiếm về nỗi đau. Nếu lúc đầu
The agenda of the ruling elite is the product of a destructive world based on their beliefs that there's not enough to go around, that some people are more deserving than others, and that their own safety depends on maintaining absolute control over the rest of us. In short, their worldview is based on scarcity and fear. But as powerful as they are, the architects of the New World Order cannot create their dreadful vision without our
Anh biết
coalition.
xa em
To
lại
stop
càng
them,
khó
to render
hơn.
their agenda
Mọi thứ trước mắt
obsolete,
cứ
we
rối
have to wake
tung. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em, như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến. Anh chờ em ở nơi hoàng hôn tết đến, khi những ánh đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời. Hãy trả lời anh được không? Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em, chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trái, chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Sau quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
To produce it for you. We have to produce it. We imaginal cells have to show that it's cheaper, more efficient, and more effective. Our job is to build a new world.
If we had the vision and a worldview that says our crisis is a birth and everybody's needed and everybody will have more of what they truly want, you could turn this desperate world into a renaissance of human creativity and love.
It may seem that the controlling elite has all the cards, but we have many advantages of our own. First, let's talk numbers. Very few people are consciously perpetrating the domination agenda. Most of those helping to implement the plan don't understand the full picture of what they're a part of. By my calculations, we outnumber the actual architects of the plan by more than 1,000,000 to 1 in the U.S. alone. Entrepreneur and environmentalist Paul Hawken estimates that there are now well over 1 million organizations in the world that work towards social and environmental justice, comprising the largest social movement in the history of humankind. This movement, connected electronically, could become a network of networks that will be the most powerful activist force for change ever.
Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
The second important advantage for us is that all the power centers that the elite control require our participation. If enough of us withdraw our support, their plan can't work. This is true of the central banks, the military, the corporate media, the government, and more. And following the models of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., we have the power of nonviolent non-participation. It takes tremendous energy, resources, and deception to try to dominate the lives of others. In moving toward freedom, on the other hand, we have on our side the evolutionary life force and what Gandhi called satyagraha, the simple power of truth.
Anh biết xa em lại càng khó hơn, mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trôi chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
90% of Italy, 90% of Austria, the freedom zones around the sea,
khi những ánh đèn đường soi sáng bầu trời, hãy trả lời anh được không?
In Bolivia, a grassroots movement took to the streets relentlessly banging
chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái em đã xem mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin trái chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
I wasn't willing to make this film until I knew there were responses that are a match for the crisis. And now the power of the internet enables us to share the breadth and the depth of this research.
We've spent years creating a vast website, thrivemovement.com, that brings it all together and makes the information and what we can do about it accessible to everyone. Here you have your very own navigator module to go deeper into the main subjects covered in the film: code, problem, and solutions. You can study strategies and tactics and connect with others to take high-leverage actions.
Every fact stated in this film has been independently verified, and the reference is on our website. This sector navigator facilitates whole systems thinking that recognizes that actions in one area impact all the others. The center of the sector navigator is worldview, because it determines how we experience everything that happens within and around us. In every sector, you'll find critical issues, resources, group strategies, and individual actions to peacefully and productively affect real change. Our resource tree will link you to the people, organizations, and media that we most recommend to help you get more fully educated and engaged. I was encouraged to find that there are a minimum number of actions which working together can tip the scales. It's not endless. Once we see the big picture, we'll look at what each of us can do to help accomplish it. Let's take a look at the strategic antidotes to their economic domination. We need to stop any more bailouts of banks or corporations, dismantle the Federal Reserve, withdraw taxpayer support from central banking agencies such as the IMF and World Bank, allow development of alternative currencies and independent banks, and refuse international taxes. My main emphasis is on solutions in the U.S., because that's what I know best. But just as the predicament is global, so are the principles on which the solution strategies are based.
Here's some tactical actions that we can take as individuals that don't take much time or money to make a real difference right now. Get informed, speak up, and connect with others. Bank locally. When we move our money out of the big centralized banks and into locally owned banks and credit unions, we defund the problem and fund the solution all in one move. Buy and invest responsibly. Every dollar you spend sends a message. Join the movement to audit and end the Federal Reserve. It's robbing us. Join a coalition to keep the internet fair and open. Don't let anybody take control of it. Support independent media. Get your information from diverse sources and think about who's funding the news you get. Support organic, non-GMO farming. Join movements to bring about honest elections, including traceable paper ballots and campaign finance reform. Congress can only be accountable to us when corporations stop funding them. Advocate for renewable and new energy technology. Bring the conversation about free energy out into the open. It will transform the power dynamic on this planet faster than anything in recorded history. Sign up for critical mass action. It's a strategy to leverage our power by waiting until a huge number of us agree to participate before taking an action. Imagine 1 million of us acting in unison. Then again, imagine even more.
I've been inspired by how many grounded solutions and real-life problem solvers there actually are. Akila Sharils is one person whose work especially touched me. He helped broker a gang truce between the Crips and Bloods.
One of the things that we discovered in the process of waging peace in the neighborhood was that conflict is healthy. You know, it's unresolved conflict that actually leads to violence. When we first launched the peace treaty, we had a lot of success in our first year. Gang homicides dropped 44% in the neighborhood based upon our actions.
Akila describes what happened when two rival gang leaders finally met after the truce.
the brother came up to him and told him, man, look, I know you got some hard feelings for me. You know, maybe I got some hard feelings for you. He said, but because of this truce, man, he said, I'm willing to put all of that to the side. And he stuck out his hand. He hugged him and he said he closed his eyes because he was preparing for a sharp, a knife to enter his back. He was waiting for the, for a bullet, to be shot into his stomach. But he said after a few moments, he held that embrace. He realized that,
chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
I'm convinced it's a world that is utterly within our grasp. We can create a world where people can thrive, where we can feel safe and secure. The air, water, and food are clean. A world where communities are capable of producing their own energy and food, and trade is open and fair. Rather than focusing on punishment, instead justice restores lives and losses. Insurance pays doctors to keep people healthy. Education is voluntary, serving the needs of individuals instead of corporations. We get honest feedback from independent media. There are no subsidies and no bailouts. Imagine that with an honest money system, little or no taxes, and low electric and fuel bills, you would have the money to pay off your home and car and be free to save and invest. You would enjoy more wealth, freedom, and security, all while working the same or probably less.
Chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
So you kind of have your cake and eat it too. Instead of working all week to make money and then coming home and trying to save the planet on the weekends, you can spend Monday through Friday making money, saving the planet, and then, go to the beach.
This vision of a thriving world is based on what could be called
anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tin cho chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim
This
anh.
insight can guide us and protect each and every individual as we set up voluntary, self-sustaining systems. It is a way of living that I can stand for wholeheartedly and without reservation. I've been profoundly influenced by the work of Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises, who developed a whole philosophy and economic system based on the core ethic of non-aggression. Motivated by having witnessed the ravages of communism and fascism in Europe, he committed his life to finding a just way. He recognized that those systems, as well as socialism and even democracy, wrongly assume the rights of the collective, or the group, to be more important than those of the individual. I had always gone along with the view that more people will thrive if we consider the group's needs above the individual's. But when I took a closer look, I found it doesn't really work that way. In the name of what's best for the group, governments have been responsible for most of the war, death, and destruction on the planet. More than 200 million individuals were killed in the 20th century alone. So how would applying the principle of non-violation change this dynamic? It would take us from incremental change of a fundamentally flawed system to a complete transformation where not just some, or even the majority, but everyone could truly have the opportunity to thrive. In order to implement the principle of non-violation, it makes sense to me to honestly re-examine our past because it doesn't work to try to build a healthy living system on top of an unhealthy. We have to go back
thế giới này, cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim
rendering destitute most of the remnants of these people is such a grievous wrong that we believe that we have to deal with that, to come to grips with that in a fundamental way. Understanding that they're not wrongs that were done and completed 150 years ago. They're wrongs that are continued every single day.
So you have, through the history of North America and the United States, over 500 treaty signed with indigenous nations, where every single one of them now has been violated. You have, in fact, a tremendous amount of wealth having been generated from indigenous people's lands and resources, and billions of dollars are still being generated by corporations and European nations based on the continued exploitation of indigenous people's lands and resources. If we didn't have large corporations, if we didn't have Western governments defining how you and I would relate to each other living here in North America,
hãy tìm
together, how would we relate to one
chỉ
another?
một
How would
trong
we make a
muôn
difference?
lý do để ngừng
It's
yêu
going to take
em,
time,
như cái
courageous
cách
effort to
em đã
shift the
xem
consciousness
chuyện
and
mình
accomplish
kết
the
thúc
tasks that will
mà
move
anh
us
vẫn
toward
cố
the
chấp
goal I'm
đến
talking about.
cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đôi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến.
In stage one, we bring as much integrity as possible to our current system. If we cut the U.S. military budget in half, it would still roughly
Khi những
equal the
ánh
defense
đèn
spending
đưa
of the entire
soi
rest of the
sáng
world.
bầu trời, hãy
Between
trả
that
lời
and
hay
the
hay được
federal reserve, over $1
không?
trillion a year
Hãy
would be
tìm
free,
trói
enough to feed
chỉ
every
một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em, như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến
But this stage
trong
isn't the
tim
end goal
anh.
of the liberty perspective. While stage one has a lot of the compassion typically associated with a liberal Democrat agenda, stage two reflects much of the wisdom of the traditional conservative worldview. In stage two, we shrink government's role to protecting individual liberty and stewarding things we share in common, like ecosystems and the airwaves we use to communicate. As the system gains integrity and we move to sound currency, people will have enough money to have more control over everything that affects them. Stage three grows out of the increasing freedom that people gain in stages 1 and 2, as they have more money and more time. There is no involuntary tax and therefore no involuntary governance. There's no monopoly on force. There are rules, but no rulers. Rigorously protecting individual rights turns out to be key for honoring our interdependence. We can be distinct and unified at the same time. As utopian as this can sound at first, I've been thrilled to see how much practical thinking has been done to deal with tough issues like healthcare, crime, and education. These three stages validate the best of both the liberal and conservative perspectives that have divided us for so long, and then reconcile them at a new level around non-violation, a core ethic we all share. Stage 3 honors human incentives and finally includes the rights of not just many, not just most, but everyone.
Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
It conserves what's working. It has built-in feedback so it can self-correct and innovate to maintain balance. We can apply these and other features of the torus dynamic to our human social systems. I truly believe that aligning consciously with the fundamental life energy pattern at every level, physical, emotional, mental, interpersonal, and environmental, is ultimately the art, the science, and the celebration of life. And that's what we are to learn. The fundamental insight way I
để
approach
em
everything.
hiểu cho
In
nỗi
my own
đau
life, I
khi
found a
phải
practical
làm
expression of
sao.
this philosophy in the
Quên là
modern,
điều
non-violent
rất
martial
khó.
art of Aikido. It offers powerful
Anh biết
guidance on
xa
how to
em
respond
lại càng
effectively
khó
and
hơn.
non-aggressively
Mọi
to
thứ
the
trước mắt
global
cứ
domination
rối
agenda.
tung. Hãy tìm
Avoid shame the issue
trói
with its
chỉ
founder,
một trong
taught that
muôn
to
lý
practice
do
Aikido
để
one
ngừng
must mimic the
yêu
movements of
em.
athletes
Như
in
cái
gala
cách
scenes.
em đã xem chuyện
Just as
mình
free
kết
energy
thúc
technology
mà
blends
anh
with
vẫn
the
cố
toroidal
chấp
pattern to
đến
access
cùng.
unlimited power,
Hãy tìm
Aikido, the way of
trói
harmony,
chỉ một trong
blends
muôn
with the
lý
energies
do
of attack.
để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến. Anh chờ em ở nơi hoàng hôn tắt ngắt khi những ánh đèn đưa soi sáng bầu trời. Hãy trả lời anh được không?
King applied these principles of
Hãy
non-aggressive
tìm
power
trói
to
chỉ
economic and social
một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chơi trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến
for how
trong
we can
tim
respond to the
anh.
challenges before us. It is the absolute stillness, the zero point, that lies at the center of each toroidal system. I believe that you and I, as well as every other being, are torus energy fields, centered by stillness and each connected to one another and to the boundless consciousness of a living universe. As much as I benefit from the experience of others, as highlighted here with the Navigating Insights, and as valuable as daily feedback is about what's really going on in the world, as we see with the vitals, I've come to recognize that our primary compass is our own inner guidance. As we learn to quiet the noise and amplify the inner signal, we can better hear the voice that naturally knows and offers wise direction.
We have an entire inner life, a vibrant and lively inner life that is truly the navigator of the path that we take on the outside. If your inner life is the driver of how you show up, it makes sense that if you want to have anything to do with where you're going, that you have to be in relationship to that inner life. You have to be in relationship to the driver. As we develop increased relationship to who's in the what happens is that there is a synergy, it's a symbiotic relationship, that our inner lives are actually able to be more in tandem with where we're choosing to go and we're able to get there. We're not nearly as insignificant in our impact as we think.
Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Story that manifests as the word.
Humanity is now in a very interesting evolutionary phase in which we move from hostile aggressive competition, which is the nature of young species, into a more mature mode of cooperation, collaboration.
There's no question in this country that money, that capital is being increasingly concentrated in the hands of a few. And those who are so powerful are concentrating it further. But there is a force that's more powerful.
Look at the crisis now. It is so easy to fall out of love. It is so easy to get pessimistic and desperate. But from my perspective, the crisis has endured to the point of being on the threshold of mass awakening, and that feeling inside me gives me the vitality to know no matter how small that endurance looks to me in the face of these huge problems, that the impulse of evolution is not small. như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn
in
soi
humankind
sáng
to
bầu
look back on
trời.
this period
Hãy trả
and be
lời
proud
hay
that
anh
when we saw, we acted. Thank you
hãy
for
tìm
coming on this journey with
trói
us.
chỉ
I'm
một trong
convinced
muôn
we
lý
have
do
what it takes to
để
thrive.
ngừng yêu
Let's make it
em
happen.
như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Sau quá khứ đuổi theo anh thì chưa chốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh.
Cycles repeating, the earth is speaking, saying time has come. Wake up from this nightmare of life. So many shattered lives reaching out, crying out for freedom, crying out for love. Carried by the current till we stand side by side on the brink of a brand new dawn. Together by the water's right, there's a story
lưu trong lời những khung trong ngàn ấy năm từng chuyện buồn vui ta có. Anh biết quên là điều rất khó. Anh biết xa em lại càng khó hơn. Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến trong tim anh. Sau những ngày nhồi đây ai ra đi sẽ chẳng quay lại. Anh cố tìm kiếm về nỗi đau. Nếu lúc đầu mình vừa vàng vừa qua nhau để tình mình chẳng còn thêm sâu. Còn anh với nỗi nhớ đông đầy. Anh ước chi em biết anh buồn để em hiểu cho nỗi đau thì phải làm sao. Quay lại là rất khó. Anh biết xa em càng khó hơn. Mọi thứ trước mắt cứ rối tung. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để ngừng yêu em. Như cái cách em đã xem chuyện mình kết thúc mà anh vẫn cố chấp đến cùng. Hãy tìm trói chỉ một trong muôn lý do để rời xa em. Dẫu quá khứ đuổi kịp anh khi chạy trốn thế giới này cũng chẳng thể làm em tan biến. Anh chờ em ở nơi hoàng hôn tắt nát khi nhớ anh đèn đường soi sáng bầu trời. Hãy trả lời hay
right.